Well, welcome everybody to our Remo3 Intune integration webinar. My name is Jo Harder. I am a colossal fan of Remo3. Actually, I've been in technology and Citrix technology specifically for 20 something years. I am a Citrix technology professional. So I've been around the block once or twice on applications and so forth. So I'll be hosting this webinar, and also Josh Travers, who's our Senior Director of Customer Success, is joining us as well. Josh, you want to tell them a little bit about you?
Sure. Thanks, Joe. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. As Joe mentioned, Josh Travers. I lead our customer success, and at Remo3, our customer success group is laser focused on the technology and really just assisting our partner ecosystem as well as our end customers from the beginning to the end on their application journey. So happy to be here and excited to show you the technology today.
All right, let's dig in without further ado. First, I want to tell you a little bit about Remo3, and I'll tell you why I'm very impressed with them. For those of you that have been in this industry for a long time, you know about the executive team, and you also know about their experience with AppDNA and FS Logics, which have been great contributions to end user computing. Remo3 is teamed with Microsoft, VMware, Citrix, as well as Spot by NetApp. And you can see an impressive list of their customers. And hopefully, if you're not a customer already, we'll add your logo to this list. So here's what we're going to talk about today. We'll first run through a quick piece focused on help my applications. Then we'll talk about the new Intune integration. And then Josh is going to run through a pretty extensive demo for us. If you do have some questions, please put them in the chat on the side of the screen. We'll address questions at specific intervals and more so towards the end of our discussion. So let's dig in and get started. So in terms of the realities of what you've been through with production, some of you may be hard pressed to admit the number of applications that you actually test for production. Numbers are coming in as low as 10% are being tested, and that means that there's a whole lot of applications that are being pushed through without any testing. For those of you that live in a production environment, that's kind of scary. I've been there, done that. Yeah, I've pushed through applications without testing them, and the next day things blow up just a little bit. So you're living on the edge in doing that, and that's one of the reasons that Remo3 is such an awesome solution. Patch time could be as much as 45 days. The implications of this are, well, for your security folks are probably not very happy about a patch not being applied for perhaps as much as 45 days. And that also can impact some of the other projects within your organization. You could have your applications that fail. The business impact to your business could be millions of dollars per minute that are lost when an application fails. Your projects could be stalled. You get more support calls. Lots of bad things happen if your applications aren't functioning properly. So help. How do we help you in addressing this? In terms of your application issues, some of the things that you may be encountering right now, you may be moving over to Windows 11. A lot of organizations are doing so. For the most part, applications are going to run fine from Windows 10 to Windows 11, but you have the occasional application that is not going to work properly. We know that Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and so forth, those are all going to work. No big deal. But most organizations have hundreds, maybe even thousands of applications, and that small percentage could make your life really miserable. Multi-user functionality. If you're going to Windows 11 multi-user, then you have a whole new set of complexity that's associated with that. A few of us were joking around beforehand about running applications, and some of you may remember using, or maybe you still use it today, is using Procmon to analyze your applications, and you're trying to figure out why the applications are not running correctly in a multi-user environment. Is there a specific call that is being made within the application that is causing your life to be miserable? I've been there at 2 a.m. struggling with a multi-user application, and I know it is not a happy place to be. So we are trying to help you prevent that from happening. Your organization is always bringing in new applications. The finance team wants this new app. The marketing team wants that new app. How do we get that application integrated? Does it work? Does it have some weirdness to it that we don't know about? Well, until you start to test, then you won't really know. Your applications have frequent updates. Some of your applications are updated as much as weekly or monthly, and do you have the bandwidth in order to support this? Do you have a testing environment? Again, I've been through the realities of production environments, and I know that your testing environment might or might not exist. Therefore, if you don't have a testing environment, maybe you're just piloting a test to a few servers or a few of your, maybe one of your workstations or one of your servers, and seeing how the users go from there. It's not really a great way to test. Your time and resource constraints. We all have a lot of things that we want to do, but not enough time to get them done. You might be short on administrators within your organization that really impacts what you are reasonably able to do. Every organization has some GPOs and lockdowns, and these can very much affect your applications. As an example, if you have a GPO that limits certain users from accessing certain file shares, and therefore they're prohibited from doing so, and the application requires it, then the application is not going to work in your environment. But if you were to install that application on a vanilla environment, then it would. So until you can actually test within your same environment, then you don't know if your GPOs or other lockdowns are having a negative impact on your system. So lastly, let's get into talking about the Intune integration, because that's why you're all here, is to learn more about how Intune functions with Remo3 and can make your life a whole lot easier. Let's talk now about what is Microsoft Intune. If you're here, you probably have some overview as to how Intune works, but it's Microsoft Endpoint Manager. It's the cloud-based functionality. You're using this, excuse me, to manage your applications and devices, and therefore you're protecting your system by doing so. So it can be thought of as a functional umbrella and also a security umbrella for your devices, as well as your applications. So before we had Intune integration, or before you knew about it, before the announcements started to go out, and you had a single administrator, the single administrator first would import, import your applications, then test them, then package them, then save them to a repository, then manually import them into Intune, and then lastly deploy these applications. When you think through as to how long that takes each of these individual processes, that can negatively impact your organization. I mentioned before that if you're performing all these steps manually, this could take 45 or more days. That's hard to accept. There's a better way. Before we get into that, let's talk about where we have distinct administrators. So if you have an application administrator that takes this scenario and they do the first part of it, that is testing, packaging, and then adding the application to the repository, then a handoff occurs. Somebody yells over the top of their cube and says, "Hey, Jim, the apps are ready. You can import them into Intune now." So what happens next is your Intune admin manually imports them and then deploys them. So again, we have a lot of steps that have occurred here, and probably there's a better way to do this. So in terms of your admin pain points, a lot of you have multiple consoles that you have open at any given time. And that's very confusing. Oh, did I click this in this console? I can't remember because I was waiting for that console to come up. And then I was also in this other console. And you have a bunch of consoles that are open for each separate function. What did I do? What did I complete? What didn't work? And maybe I didn't notice the error message. That all happens, and that's all reality. Within every organization, the security folks want to have a separation of responsibilities. That is, person A has nobody's a full admin anymore. Well, I shouldn't say nobody, but there's very, very few of them in any organization. Everyone has specific administrative privileges based on their responsibilities and what they need to have. So because you don't have full domain or full system admin rights, you can't see over the boundaries into someone else's domain. Lastly, you have a lot of manual steps, a lot of extra time, and more importantly, errors that can occur. Did I mistype something? And we've all done it with IP addresses. We've done it with names of files, names of everything that you have to type in. Did I type something incorrectly? Did I enter it incorrectly? And then you're up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out what didn't work right. How are we going to fix this? We're going to fix this with automation and the entire being able to take that application process one step further. So here's how it works. First, we're going to select the applications that we want to export. And you'll notice here we've got a few options. We can download the applications if we want to. That is, if you don't use Intune and you do need to send them over to a repository. We can send the apps to Intune. And hey, look, there's something else here about sending the applications over to Nerdio. Maybe this is a sneak preview for something that's coming soon. Okay, after you have chosen what you want to export, then you can automatically import into Intune. It would be an entire process that would be completed very, very quickly. And you'll see this in the demo that Josh is going to do for you in just a moment. So in terms of your export options, you've got 3 basic options: the MSIX, the MSI, as well as other. So depending on what the application and what its capabilities are and what you've chosen to export, it's all there for you. We can even send it to the Intune wrapper for you. In terms of your admin time and effort, and Josh, I'm going to ask that you keep me honest here, because I've walked through this whole process myself, and this is my estimation. In terms of importing and testing the applications, about 5 minutes of admin time. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, at the top end, absolutely.
Okay. Then to package the application, 2 minutes, maybe?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. And then exporting to Intune, a minute. And I think I'm being generous here too.
I would agree. Yeah, that all looks right to me.
Okay, so we're looking at about 8 minutes in total for this entire process. Now that includes testing your applications, importing the application, testing it, packaging it, and exporting to Intune. And oh, by the way, you don't have to do just one application at a time. If you want to import half a dozen, a few dozen applications, whatever it may be, all at once, there's a lot of work that happens in the background, and your admin time is basically still the same. Pretty cool, huh? Okay, so how Intune integration works is like this. First, you configure the Intune server connection. Once you have that done, you select the applications that you're going to export. And at this point, I'm going to say don't blink, because literally it flashes through the screen. And if you miss it, it's gone. And that's okay, because you don't really need to see it, but it flashes through just so that you're comfortable that it did indeed happen. And then you're done. So it's a very, very fast process. Let me read to you a quote from Ben Wilcox, who's the CTO at ProArch. He says, "This powerful addition to Remo3's robust testing platform now offers a smooth transition from importing packages from Config Manager, along with their customizations, test them on a modern operating system, and modernize them, all prior to publishing into Intune. We're excited to partner with Remo3, whose innovative solutions are removing substantial friction in the shift to the cloud." That's pretty impressive. And I think after seeing the demo, you'll be thinking, you'll be agreeing with Ben and thinking the same thing. So speaking of the demo, let's flash over to the demo. Here's what you're going to see in the demo. First, Josh is going to show you how to import and onboard the applications. Then he's going to run through the unattended intelligent testing and modernization of the applications. Here's the really cool piece of it, because you set it to go and life is really good. And then how to export the applications. So with that, let me turn it over to you, Josh, and you can show them how this all works.
Fantastic. So let's go ahead and jump in here. And as Joe mentioned, we certainly want to show you the latest and greatest, being the ability to export the applications to modern management planes like Intune and Nerdio. And we will absolutely show that. However, we'll take a couple steps back for those of you that may not have the opportunity to know what Remo3 platform does at its core competencies. So what we're looking at here is just a Remo3 portal screen. And really, when we start to explore this technology and we boil it down to its core, Remo3 is a very robust automation and orchestration engine. What we're automating is intelligent dynamic testing of applications. And what we're orchestrating is all of the test environments in the background. And I'll talk through some of that. So first steps to engage with Remo3 is really establishing what your current operating environment is, and then letting Remo3 know what your definition of a modern workspace is, which we defined as a target. And I'll talk a little bit about why and the reasoning behind why we need this current environment as a starting place. So once we've established what we want to analyze and gather data around as it relates to our applications, it's now all about importing and onboarding those applications. And as Joe mentioned, we do offer out-of-the-box integrations with SCCM. And the advantages here is, one, it's an automated way to retrieve your entire application portfolio. But what comes along with that is years of packaging logic. All of that information, all of the scripts, all of the catalog data that supports that application to operate in your environment. One of the things we pride ourselves here at Remo3 is we're not just testing applications against Windows operating systems. We're testing your applications against your configured Windows operating systems. And the results drastically change once we take into consideration those years of, call it technical debt or call it packaging scripting logic that exists in a repository like SCCM. Now, if you're not using SCCM, that's completely fine. We have a variety of mechanisms in order to support the importing of those application packages. And what I mean by that are the MSIs. The app-vs, the setup.exes, the PowerShell deploys. If it can be installed unattended on a Windows workspace, it's a good candidate for Remo3's automation. So after we've imported either automatically through SCCM or through another supported mechanism, now this is where the automation and the intelligence starts to kick in. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to perform a Remo3 deep-rooted discovery on each and every application package that comes in. And again, these are custom. I believe Andrew Lloyd had asked a question. It doesn't matter if it's a COTS off-the-shelf application that you may have packaged with your preferred packaging technology or an in-house developed application. This discovery process would support, again, assuming that it can be installed silently on that Windows workspace. And the purpose of our discovery process is to obtain as much data around that application as possible. So we're starting to build the intelligence profile around that app. As you can see here in this example, we're pulling out the metadata to help with versioning and manufacturing details, but then we get into the inner working components of the app. And this is the exciting stuff. So these are things like the core executables, shortcuts that are laid down on the executables. What we then do is we take these parent processes, we launch them, and then we start to follow the line down. So if they generate child processes, we're going to go and interrogate those. If it's laying down any service information, changing the registry, our entire purpose again is to obtain as much data as possible, because this is what we're going to use in the intelligent testing. And this is what allows us to be dynamic and really have no prerequisite knowledge on the application, because Remo3 is figuring out what that test case looks like for your unique application sets. So once we've completed that discovery, the end result is really a living, breathing profile that now lives in Remo3 as it relates to those applications. And then we start to automate the testing sequence. And as I mentioned, we do require the current operating environment, and we define that as a baseline. Now, of course, we're not trying to determine application compatibility out of this baseline intelligent smoke test. What we're trying to do is add to that intelligence that Remo3 is building. And we want to tell Remo3 what good looks like. We know the app works because you're running it for tens of thousands of users in production today. But again, we want to add that to that intelligence profile so we know how to build, or if we're going to move to a modern environment, in our case here, we're using Windows 10 to Windows 11, we can get very deep into the details in terms of what impact that change that change is bringing. So what we do is we run that intelligent smoke test, again, 100% unattended and automated, and then we capture that baseline. We store that baseline within the platform. Now we start to move and look at those modern operating environments. So what we've done here is we've discovered the application, we've extracted all of that data, we've baselined that application against your current production builds, and now we start to test it against those modern workspaces. So what you'll see here is that the entire process is automated and unattended, but if I go and double click, provide you a window into what's happening, it's very interesting, because what we're going to do is the first step is we're going to provision the virtual environment. So in our case here, we're going to spin up the Windows 11 21H2 environment. Then we're going to install the application based off of our knowledge that we've imported to SCCM or you've imported into the system. And this is a very important validation check. If we look at future stage testing like UAT or what we define as level 2, that makes the assumption that the application is already installed. Within our Remo3's automated process, we're validating that deployment installation works. Then, based off of that intelligent information, we're going to dynamically test it based on those executables, those services, the child processes, etc. And then we're going to uninstall the application, and we're going to deprovision that virtual environment to maximize compute. Now, all of this, again, is happening within the matter of minutes and is completely unattended. Aside from the low-level console view that we're seeing here, we're also recording the entire automated sequence and then providing static screenshots out to really complement that log level data that we're providing in order to provide our customers and partners with the most information possible. And again, if we look at the application testing process in a generic sense, a lot of the time the results from the test are getting passed around to other stakeholders, whether that's in-house development, in-house packaging. And again, being able to complement that log level data with visual aid helps our customers and partners tremendously. And then the last thing that I'll talk about within the automated sequence is Remo3 is also capturing key performance metrics. Now we're capturing these metrics in isolation, meaning we're not looking at anything else that's going on that operating build, contention, things like that. What we're trying to do is to determine, in our case here, if I were to take this application from a Windows 10 environment to a modernized Windows 11 environment, will that impact performance? And it's funny because we always look at performance impact, we gravitate to negative. Potentially there could be positive performance impacts. Again, Remo3's goal is to inform you of what that impact looks like. So the result at the end of our intelligent automated sequence is we are determining if there's impact to deployment by ways of installation, core functionality by ways of the intelligent smoke test, and then performance. And if there is impact, is it positive, negative, or no impact at all? So what happens is, because the entire platform is built to test these applications in batch and at scale, what we can do then is start to roll up into an entire application estate view, so that you can determine what the risk level is should we want to upgrade operating systems. And again, we're using a net new version of Windows in today's demonstration. However, keep in mind, this could be a change to your existing Windows. If we wanted to patch our 2004 build, if there's a new GPO update, a security patch, we're switching antivirus software. Again, all change comes in different shapes and sizes. Really what we're doing in Remo3 is we're just pointing Remo3 towards that change and then rinsing and repeating that intelligent automated smoke testing process. I'm going to pause a moment there and open it up if there's any burning Q&A questions there that I'm unable to see the screen by sharing. But is there anything in the chat, Joe, that we need to address now, or should we keep moving?
Yeah, actually, there's excuse me, there's a few questions. One is, how could this be used in an MSP environment where you have different customers so far as a licensing? And I think we'll get Brad perhaps to take that question one-on-one from a licensing perspective. Question came up about the Nerdio integration path, but we'll talk about that in the Q&A in just a moment. And a question also had come up about the in-house applications, and you addressed that one. So I think we're good.
Fantastic. We will continue. So as we start to build out our use case and walk through the journey of Remo3, again, just to recap, what we've done is we've imported the applications, we've discovered building the intelligence, dynamically tested the applications and captured those results. Now we're presenting those results back as in a consumable format. So if I do have failures, again, I think the last couple examples that I showed were more on pass rates, but those failures can easily be bubbled to the top. And not only what applications failed, but again, the ability to drill down and determine exactly where that application failed. If we look at this particular one, it installs no problem. But then once we get into that dynamic intelligent test, we can see exactly where it starts to fail. And then again, start to reference screenshots if we need be as well. So all of the functionality, including the ability to export the data, is fully supported by Remo3's RESTful API. And that's really how we accomplish some of the integrations that I'll talk about in a moment here. But the next thing that I would like to talk about is the ability to modernize your applications within Remo3 as well, part of the exact same automated sequence. So what we do after we capture the results is then we look at application modernization by ways of, is this application a candidate for Microsoft's MSIX modern packaging technology? And the only way that we can determine if the application is a suitable candidate is to actually attempt to convert that app as it came in its native format, meaning if it came in as an app V, we'll take that app V and we'll attempt to convert that into MSIX, MSI, and so on and so forth. Now, one of two things can happen after that conversion attempt, which, by the way, we are using the native Microsoft conversion tools with our own logic and enhancements built on top of that for the purpose of trying to increase that success rate of getting those apps into MSIX. So after that attempt, really one of two things are going to happen. It's either going to pass, meaning successfully convert, or it's going to fail. Now, if it fails, again, we'll show you exactly why and where it failed within that automated process. Now, if it passes the conversion, that's fantastic. We know it can be containerized into MSIX. Then what Remo3 does is it conducts a post-conversion intelligent smoke test in that newly created MSIX package. So not only determining, is it a suitable candidate for that format, but will it function as expected once we get it into the new format? And our data and what we've learned is working with customers that are beginning their MSIX modernization journey, they tend to get laser focused on how many applications I can get into that format. And unfortunately, the blind spot is just because it can convert into that format does not necessarily mean that it will function. And again, Remo3 performs that validation check. Now, once we should we achieve success after successful conversion, as Joe had mentioned, because we're converting it, we're signing it with a public trusted root cert, what that end result is a production-ready MSIX package that then we can download to our local machine. But now we can segue in to the latest and greatest feature enhancements. And I'll start with the ability now to take these MSIXs and export them automatically into Intune. And for that, because a lot's happening here, I'm just going to bring up this slide to walk through that operational workflow so that you understand exactly what's going on. So in terms of the testing and the importing, we talked about that, right? We'll use Config Manager as the example. We import all of the applications with all of the supported information. We then run unattendedly the intelligent smoke test against those applications. We capture the results, right? The results are either pass or fail. If it fails, Remo3 is going to provide that failure information and as much data as it possibly can to inform you of how to remediate that failure, or make a decision on best to remediate, retire, etc. Then after you've taken the information, you perform the remediation exercise outside of the Remo3 platform, we just reinitiate or rinse and repeat and pass it through that automation engine to perform that intelligent smoke test for the goal of achieving a pass. Now, this is where it gets very interesting, because if we are able to successfully test the application, then we look at the application package, and Remo3 has introduced conditional logic as it relates to the export of Intune. So if we're able to successfully convert it and validate that MSIX package on a modern operating system, we're going to export that as an MSIX line of business app into Intune. Now, what happens if the application fails as an MSIX package? Well, what we can then do is we look at that application and all of the intelligence that we've gathered. So one use case is it's a simple MSI. It doesn't have any transforms or any heavy weighted dependencies. No problem. We're going to wrap that as an encrypted MSI and automatically export that into Intune as well. Now, the third is in the event that should it fail as MSIX, and it is an MSI, but it has, a bunch of transform files, a bunch of dependencies, and it's a large complex app. This is what the conditional logic does, is it makes those hard decisions for you. Again, these are data-driven decisions based off of the intelligence that we've gathered along the way. And then what we'll do is we'll wrap it as a Win32 app and then export that into Intune. So what happens is our API then takes those wrap packages, puts it into a secure storage, and then exports that directly into Microsoft Intune, so that we position ourselves to have these applications into that modernized management plane to then take advantage of everything that Intune has to offer. Now, there's a couple different ways that we can sequence this. As you can see here, we do offer the ability to export those one by one, or we also offer the ability to export those into in batch into Intune as well, based off of your conversion results. And a lot's going on behind the scenes, but we do provide full visibility in terms of those sequences. So if I drill in, you'll see a very familiar interface, the same as we use for the testing. But what you'll see here is, again, as Joe mentioned, in the matter of minutes, that conditional logic is enforced, right? It makes the decision. You can see here that this one is then packaged into it's considered a complex app. So we're going to package it and then upload that as a Win32 application directly into Intune. And as we switch over to Intune, just to kind of show the end result, we come in and now we have been able to populate our repository through all of the applications, not only just exported from Remo3, but validated via the Remo3 intelligent smoke test, packaged to the most optimal packaging format, and then again, exported directly into Intune. So with that being said, what I will do is I will just transition and show a slightly different use case, this time using Nerdio, for those of you that may already be using Nerdio or exploring that to add that rich feature set to your AVD environment. So the exact same operational workflow exists, right? And we get it to an MSIX state within here. Now, our use case within Nerdio is we do have automated export capabilities in batch. Now, this is the interesting part, is once we export this production ready, tested and trued MSIX package to Nerdio, what Nerdio is doing is it's accepting that package, automatically converting Remo3's MSIX package to a VHD, then mounting that VHD automatically to an image. So now that we can start to take advantage of Microsoft App Attach. Very quickly, very automatically. And what you'll see here is I'm just showing the Nerdio console. Again, zero interaction, 100% unattended. We were able to achieve MSIX. Nerdio digests the Remo3 MSIX package. It works its magic via its automation and API capabilities, converts that MSIX to VHD, and then mounts that VHD. And now the administration entry point has even more been improved, because we're not worrying about packaging the applications or worrying if those applications work. We can now start to assign the host pool, start to assign the users and again, take advantage of all what Nerdio has to offer within that context. So the last thing that I will mention now before I hand it back to you, Joe, is we talked about all of the operational workflow. We talked about the new integrations, the automated ability to export into those modern management planes. Now, what you're looking at here is a management workspace within Remo3. And because we've invested this initial effort to import the applications into Remo3, of course, there's going to be introductions of net new apps that we just reinitiate that pipeline. But with all of the existing application estate, we now have living, breathing examples in here. So what we've done automatically by importing these applications, if we've now positioned ourselves to be extremely agile, to be able to test and analyze against any future change, which we know is going to happen, but you're able to do this in a fraction of the time. So now, because I have all of the applications here, should I want to upgrade to 22H1 in the near future? Do I have a critical security patch? We're now just a couple clicks of the mouse away in Remo3, where we then just point Remo3 to that new environment and then have it rinse and repeat its automation to be able to provide you with that data in terms of the results to make those informed decisions. So we'll go ahead and pause there for a moment, open it up for any questions that may be there on anything that we've covered since the last pause.
Yeah, there's been a question about, can it install applications that do not have a silent switch?
Only if those applications are MSI or AppV, if they've been packaged there. Remo3 has the ability, just the nature of those packages through the MSI table structures and the AppV XML manifest, we can gather as much information as possible. If not, the simple batch file or install commands or install.cmd, if that's a possibility, we tend to go there. But that is the one requirement for applications, is that the installation be 100% unattended.
Okay. Well, I will say that you got a few thumbs up as you were doing your demo. So I think that's, people really get it, and that's exciting. All right, let's jump over to some additional Q&A. Before we do that, we had asked you at the very beginning, what would you do with your extra free time if you didn't have to package and deploy applications and if it wasn't such a manual process? And 38% of you said you wanted to learn a new technology. 25% said you wanted to watch the entire Marvel universe. 19% of you said go for a hike. 13% would volunteer at CUGC Women in Tech, because that's something that I'm really involved with. 6% of you said you would mentor a worker. I was kind of torn because I would ride my horse, but that's just me. All right, let me jump into then some additional Q&A. We did do some private previews of this technology and a few questions that came up. Let me run through some of these. So I'll just run through a few of these. In the meantime, if you have any additional questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. All right, one question that has come up is there an additional fee? If you're already hooked on Remo3, does it cost anything more for this new Intune integration? And the answer to this is no, it's included. Yay, it's free. A few questions came up about the Nerdio integration. I think Josh did a really nice demo as to how that worked. But you saw how it was just as simple as exporting over to Nerdio within the UI. Another question, which formats can be imported from Config Manager? MSI, AppV, XEs, and scripts. So various formats can be input in terms of what Remo3 can do with it from there. And the permission requirements for importing into Intune. Josh didn't show this because the Intune integration was already set up. So first you create that Intune connection. Next, you designate the service account credentials, and then those credentials are automatically invoked. The service account needs to have these permissions: service device management, apps, read, write all, and service device management, read all permissions. So what's nice about this, it's set it once and you're good to go. You don't need to then enter those credentials each time an application is input in or exported into Intune. How long will it take to do a bulk export of, say, 50 apps? I mentioned previously that we were looking at an entire admin process of about 8 minutes. A lot of things happen behind the scenes that the admin isn't participating in. But first, we have to select the apps we're going to export, then the automatic transfer. And I love the word automatic because anytime anything happens that you don't have to touch, to me, that's automatic, and we like that. And then the imported apps are going to appear in Intune. So it's about 35 to 45 minutes of unattended compute time, but in terms of admin time, it's roughly about 8 minutes. So before we close out, let's walk through the Remo3 platform. In terms of testing, it's an automated process. Then we're painlessly creating those app packages. And then lastly, the new feature and functionality is that we're selecting those applications and then exporting them. So it all flows very nicely. It's a super easy console to use. You basically can click through it and you'll find your answers right away because it really was designed very well so that as an admin, it's not something else that you need to learn. It's something that's just really easy to use. Let me jump over to any additional questions that came through. Looks like a few of you are requesting some additional information. We'll get back to you one-on-one in terms of seeing a demo and so forth and licensing. And we're excited that you're excited about this because it really is some great technology. So with that, if there are no other questions, anything else, Josh, that you think we need to append the discussion with? Because you did a great job on the demo.
No. I think we covered everything, at least from the solution overview perspective. So just like to thank everyone else again for their time.
Yeah, thanks everybody. If you want to learn more, go to the Remo3 website. And if you want a demo, we'd love to be able to show you how this works in more detail and address your specific questions. Just send a note to sales@remo3.com. So thanks everyone for attending. Appreciate your time.
Remo3 offers automated pre-deployment testing of Windows applications, OS updates, and security patches. Use unattended automation to test and assess application readiness for Windows 10, Windows 11, Windows 365, Azure Virtual Desktop, as well as identifying MSIX and multi-session suitability. Your apps, your workspace, our priority.